welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! This is a podcast based on a blog of the same name because where you lead, Couch Potatoes Unite will follow, because that is our name. No, really, it is. I'm the blogger in question and the self-styled chief couch potato. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out the blog at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and via Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to Broadchurch, New Girl, Game of Thrones, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, Supernatural, The 100, Once Upon a Time, Stranger Things, and the Arrowverse, including Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Supergirl. We've published several multi-part looking back to look forward series, including The X-Files from its inception through its revival, and our Fuller House series. Plus, more episodes are in the works, including revisits for Doctor Who, How to Get Away with Murder, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and our American Horror Story series covering Roanoke, a revisit to our Marvel's Defender series where we talk Iron Fist, final visits with our Grimm and Vampire Diaries panels to say goodbye to these long-running and ending series in two-part episodes. Plus, we'll be launching new panels covering the Mindy Project and Sense8, new series examining Sherlock, and an anniversary retrospective about the Buffyverse, covering Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. And because we also look back at shows now past, we'll be looking back at Glee, Person of Interest, and Third Rock from the Sun. What's more, CPU from time to time goes live. We've appeared at Comedy Outlet Mondays at Dog Story Theater and at Grand Rapids Comic-Con in Grand Rapids, Michigan, while streaming live on Facebook. More live appearances are being planned, so make sure you like us at our Facebook page, our Twitter, follow us at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, and or our Pinterest at CPU Podcast, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we're always seeking new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any one of those outlets aforementioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback of all kinds, unless you're Kirk. We'll pass on Kirk's feedback. Today's panelists are starting a new miniseries focusing on a cult favorite romantic dramedy that enjoyed a popular following on the WB and then the CW before coming to none other than Netflix in a revival series event. As much as I love TV, however, sometimes others love certain TV way more than I do. Also, I moderate a lot, in case you haven't noticed. And also, in case you haven't noticed, we have some very loyal CPU panelists who appear on a lot of our panels, probably because they love TV too. Well, today, our most frequent panelist takes the moderating mic once again because, in my humble estimation, her passion for the shows we're about to discuss, I think, far exceeds mine. So it seemed like a good fit. You might have heard our moderator, the lovely Kristen's voice, on at least 3/4 of our active panels. In fact, there's too many to list, so just check out our website and look for the list of all CPU panelists and the page brought up under the left dialog box, floating in the header, the picture of the TV watcher at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com. Kristen's moderated other panels, namely our How to Get Away with Murder panel as co-moderator and our Fuller House series as sole moderator. She'll be moderating this series, which starts with a look back at Gilmore Girls, followed by ongoing coverage of Gilmore Girls A Year in the Life, which could be more than 1 year if the cards fall favorably, while I take a breather and chat all things Stars Hollow as a regular old panelist. With that said, I'd like to welcome back Kristen to the moderating microphone. Take it away, Kristen!
Thanks, Kylie. Happy to be back moderating Gilmore Girls. This show is without a doubt one of my top 10 favorite television shows of all time, so I am ready to get started. Today we are taking a look back at Gilmore Girls, a comedy drama created by Amy Sherman Palladino, which ran on the WB and then the rebranded CW from October 5th, 2000 until May 15th, 2007. It only won 1 Emmy for makeup in 2004, which kind of blows my mind a little bit. But it has been featured on many top lists from publications such as Entertainment Weekly and Time magazine. Filled with rapid-fire dialogue and lots of pop culture references, it soon became a fan and critic favorite. Gilmore Girls follows single mother Lorelai Gilmore, played by Lauren Graham, and her Ivy League-bound daughter Rory, played by Alexis Bledel, who live in the fictional town of Stars Hollow, Connecticut. The town is filled with many colorful characters and is located about 30 minutes from the real town of Hartford, which is the home of Lorelai's parents, Richard and Emily, played by Edward Herrmann and Kelly Bishop. The series explored issues of family, friendships, romance, and generational divides in social class, manifested mainly in the dynamic between Lorelai and her wealthier and more traditional parents. If you would like a more complete breakdown of the entire 7 seasons, I recommend checking out Wikipedia or other similar pages, as it is way too long to get into in this intro. For this latest installment of CPU's Looking Back series, I've gathered a group of Gilmore Girls panelists who are ready to reminisce, including 2 familiar voices and 2 brand new voices. As always, it should be noted that all the panelists have viewed Gilmore Girls in its entirety and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those listeners who haven't watched Gilmore Girls yet, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Hello, Gilmore Girls panel!
Hello, Kristen!
Hi, moderator!
Hi, Kylie! So, at this time, I would like the panel to introduce themselves. The returning panelists and former moderator also know the drill, but here's a quick reminder for the new listeners and the new panelists. First, you'll be asked to identify yourself by first name only, and let us know how you came to watch Gilmore Girls, such as how did you find out about it, what made you start watching, what kept you watching, and did you watch it as it aired, in syndication, or did you find love when it went into streaming on Netflix? Second, I will also need you to rate your interest in the show. And since this is a looking back podcast, I want you to rate your interest when you started watching and your interest when you ended watching, as your opinion may or may not have changed. And since this is a lovely CPU exclamation point exclusive question, we do things a little differently. And so we rate interest based with character descriptions. And there are a lot of characters in the lovely town of Stars Hollow, so I really limited it to as few as I could. So if your favorite one is not listed, I do apologize, but I had to draw the line somewhere. So did you watch Gilmore Girls because it was everything to you? Perfect or not, it was like your favorite takeout and a strong cup of coffee from Luke's, like Lorelai. It was sweet and had good intentions, but it had its pitfalls, like Rory. It was fun and quirky and always there when you needed it, like Suki. It kept you alive, and it was pretty much the best part of your day or your week, and it had some surprisingly tender moments, like Luke. It was complicated, but arguably the best show on TV, like Emily. It was a good investment of your time. It was very practical, like Richard. It was competitive, smart, and going places, like Paris. It was effortlessly cool, but had a disappointing ending, like Lane. It was horrible, completely lacking in culture and sophistication, but it had its moments. That's a really, really horrible version of my Michelle accent. And maybe it was so many things to so many people, but you could never narrow down what it really was to you, like Kirk, or it was the worst, like April.
Yes.
So who would like to start first?
I'm Krista, and
Hi, Krista!
I don't remember when I started watching it. I know I caught some reruns, and then I know I watched part of the last season in real time, but I have no recollection. We didn't have cable growing up, so I wouldn't have been able to some extent, but I know like in college I did, so time is confusing. I did definitely go back and rewatch it all on Netflix probably twice. Actually, before that, someone let me borrow all the CDs. This was DVD time. Yes. Initially, it was fun and quirky and always there when you needed it, like Suki.
So in the beginning, you were a Suki.
I was a Suki, but now I'm more of a Rory. It was sweet and had good intentions, but it also had its pitfalls.
All right, Suki to Rory. Well, welcome back, Krista.
I'm Chelsea.
Hi, Chelsea.
Hi. I think I started watching Gilmore Girls when it was on ABC Family or something.
Yeah.
Because it was on when I would get home from school, and so that's what like me and my sisters and my mom would all watch together, and
Aww.
that was like the thing to do. And then I got all the DVDs, and now Netflix just all the time. You know, you can always come back to it and bounce around wherever. I think I watched it because I don't know that my answer would change. I think I'm an Emily. because it's complicated, but like one of the best shows then, and to come back to now, it's still a really good one.
Awesome. Well, welcome to CPU, Chelsea.
Thank you.
And she is different from our Chelsea on our Game of Thrones and Stranger Things. So you'll be identified as Chelsea L on our website.
Hi, I'm Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
My dad actually got me into watching it when it was in syndication, also in the pre-freeform days of ABC Family. And he was just flipping through and he's like, hey, I think you should check this show out. You know, this mother-daughter reminds me of you and your mom, which I still don't see it, but it got me connected to the show and it was fun to watch. So again, like right after school, that would be like pre-homework time, eat dinner, watch some Gilmore Girls. And then I'd actually missed season 7 altogether, so I had thought the series ended a completely different way until the magic of Netflix. So I'd say my opinion of it is the fun and quirky and always there when you needed it from start to finish.
All right, so you were a Suki through and through. All right, well, welcome to CPU, Samantha.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm back.
Hi, Kylie.
Hi. So I started watching Gilmore Girls largely because I was somewhat highly encouraged to do so by the moderator.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Because as I was talking about it to people, when the Gilmore Girls was on the WB, that's where it started, and my perception of people who watched the WB were as follows. You basically fell into 3 categories. You either watched Gilmore Girls and Felicity and One Tree Hill and those kind of shows, or you watched Buffy and Angel and Charmed, or maybe you were, one of the lucky people who was open-minded enough to do both. Although I find that population smaller. So I was in group 2. I watched the Buffys and the Angels and the Charms and not so much the Gilmore Girls and the Felicities. I have gone back and watched both of those, though, now, obviously, because we're here. I watched it on Netflix. I did watch the whole series. I thought it was very pleasant to watch, and I enjoyed it. I don't know that I can jump on the this is the greatest show of all time thing, so we'll talk about that. But I did really enjoy it. I did like watching all of the characters, and I find myself relating to Lorelai more than I feel like I probably should, but that's okay. When I started the series, I would have been Rory. It was sweet and had good intentions, but had its pitfalls. I saw that from the very first, and we'll talk about that. By the end of the show, I was actually probably more like Kirk. It was so many things to so many people, but I could never narrow down what it was to me. I think that's very, very accurate. I liked it, I just can't get beyond I liked it. So everybody else has passion. I will be the least passionate, but we can talk about the stuff. So, and I will be a panelist today, so this should be interesting.
Well, welcome to the panelist side of things, Kylie.
Thanks, Kristen.
All right, well, last but not least, like I said, my name is Kristen. I'll be your moderator today. I first started watching Gilmore Girls when it was in syndication on the former ABC Family, now Freeform. Very similar to Chelsea, it was on when I came home after school, and I loved it. And I would even continue watching it like when I went to college, because I was starting college as the series was ending, and so I was able to kind of catch up a little bit, but I was never able to watch it in real time. So I didn't see the series in its entirety or in the correct order until I started streaming it on Netflix after it became available, a year or two ago prior to this recording. And I realized how many episodes I'd actually missed. There are some that they don't show in syndication for whatever reason, so it was nice to finally see it as a full entity. My interest in the show, I think when it started, I was very much an Emily. I liked that it was complicated. I liked that it wasn't always happy-go-lucky. Things wouldn't necessarily get solved by the end of this 45-minute runtime. I liked that it was a little more realistic about relationships. And for me, it was the best show on TV. I would make time to watch it. But now, looking back on it, I think for me, it's more of a Suki. It's fun, it's quirky, but it's always there. I can always go back to it and watch my favorites when I need a little pick-me-up. First big question. What did you guys love? What did you hate? Are there any things that really still stand out to you?
Can we start with which team we're on in terms of the guys?
We're going to get to that later.
It's later? Yeah. I apologize.
She's got to work, Krista.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's question 10. I apologize.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason to my...
I know there is, and I'm sorry I missed it.
You're not the moderator.
Well,
Spicy.
I really just I'm not trying to cause trouble.
Sam wants to talk.
I'll start with what I love, and that's just the crazy fast dialogue and just the pacing of it, especially when characters would be arguing. Maybe I'm a little twisted in that I love seeing characters argue on TV, but it's always that pacing that just kept it going and kind of mimics real life, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I loved the pacing of it. It never felt slow or like it dragged, like some shows kind of do. They really did make the most of the time that they have. And when a show would normally be like 60 pages per episode, I think they said Gilmore Girls was averaging like 80 to 90 pages because everything had to be delivered so quickly.
For me, it made me not like other shows that I had previously really loved when I would go back and watch them again after having a pace like Gilmore Girls has. It would be kind of boring to watch other shows, and I would lose interest because it wasn't quick enough.
To me, that was definitely one of the best parts, because what the rapid dialogue did for Gilmore Girls was it kept it from descending into sort of a formulaic romantic comedy trope kind of thing, which is actually kind of what I prejudged it to be, which is why I didn't watch it at first. So when I did watch it and found all of these snappy dialogue plus all of the pop culture references, which were probably more my favorite part than the rapid dialogue itself, then I was like, okay, I can see why everybody loves the show, because it's just constant. Everything is constant, and you have to probably watch it more than once just to catch everything they're saying.
I would think that my favorite part was the overall character development, that they did not, for better or for worse, and their choices were sometimes questionable, they remained to be real people, and they weren't static characters who just did the same thing over and over and over again. And I also like that time actually progressed. In some shows, it's not super clear if it's actually been a year, where I feel like we actually got to see, Rory graduate and go to college, and things seem to be going through what we would consider a normal time frame.
Yeah, because each season of the show was more or less a regular calendar year or a school year,
right,
as far as Rory goes. Because we saw her start off as a high school sophomore, and the series finished with her graduation from college.
And 7 seasons, 7 years, that makes sense.
Yep.
I was going to piggyback off of what Kylie said about the dialogue, how when it's so fast, it can't possibly catch everything the first time, which makes it more fun when you go back, because it's like, oh, hey, I didn't catch that the first time. It's really interesting. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing.
Is there anything you guys didn't like? Like, if you could pick one thing, was there a character you didn't like, or a situation? Or...
It's kind of interesting that, here's the spicy, it's kind of interesting that Krista brings up they didn't do repetitive things.
Well,
I would disagree. Because there were characters that their whole shtick was repetitive. For example, Kirk. He was a one-note joke that went on for 7 seasons. But also, Rory... Lovely Rory, sweet Rory, she made a lot of the same damn mistakes, okay? To the point of frustration. So, I was like, that's why I was like, I know we're going to get into that. Maybe I'm forcing your segue a little early, and so I'll stop if you don't want me to. But just with the track of her boyfriends, which is probably the biggest identifiable trait of the show, she did a lot of similar things, even though all of those boys were different. And I was like, I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how I feel about that. Go ahead.
To echo that, I feel that way about Lorelai a lot.
They are too.
And to some extent, I want it to be like, get over the fact that your parents are rich. This doesn't need to be a sticking point for your entire life. Also, who just up and leaves like the day before their wedding without calling anybody? That just seems like a jerk move.
Well, there is an ongoing controversy about the selfishness of Lorelai Gilmore.
I loved her with Digger a lot, but I thought that he was actually like a grown-up for her, which was nice, and someone that she couldn't completely control. And then she broke up with him because he got in a fight with her dad, and I'm like, you don't even like your dad, like 90% of the time. I go back and rewatch that section, and I'm like, maybe he, like that actor had like a conflict, and he had to leave, because that's the only thing that seems to make any sense.
Right.
Like, when Robert Downey Jr. had to go to jail during Ally McBeal.
I'm the first one to say I'm all about the Luke and Lorelai relationship, but I too liked Digger, so. I can agree with you there, but it's at least a realistic foil of getting in the way of their eventual connection.
Right.
He was more realistic than Max, because it's like, where's Max gonna go? It seems so inappropriate to be dating your kid's teacher.
Yeah.
But he was very sweet. Max was such a sweet guy, and yeah, Lorelai kind of did a horrible thing leaving him, the night before their wedding. I don't know, I wasn't the biggest Digger fan. I liked that Lorelai broke up with him because he got into a fight with her dad. For me, that was a turning point for her relationship with Richard, and I feel like that's kind of the path it had to take, because she still really loved her dad. She would even see her dad and just not see her mom. She wouldn't see Emily. So, I don't know, I felt like that was true to character for Lorelai to send Digger to the curb.
And in defense of the Lorelai character, because the get over yourself coming from the silver spoon thing, I get that, but at the same time, what the series shows you is it's not the fact that they were rich, it's the fact that they were overbearing. Mm-hmm. So, overbearing for good reasons, but overbearing,
Yeah, and I think it was to show just how different their daughter, how different Lorelai was from Richard and Emily. Because they were very well-to-do, but they were also very concerned with appearances and doing things the right way. And, Emily was in the Daughters of the American Revolution, and Richard was an investment banker, and all this. They were very traditionalist, and Lorelai is anything but. And so I think her focusing on the money aspect was just another way to show that divide, that she was self-made, much like her dad.
I mean, it's also easy to say that, but people have deep-seated issues and it's a very realistic thing to not get over it, actually. But so, you go in a circle.
Did they ever establish where her genetics came from? Because I found myself asking that question a lot as I watched the original series. Like, where did she get this sense of free-spiritedness when Emily and Richard so clearly don't have it?
I don't think they ever really addressed it. It was just, that's just who she is as an individual, I think.
And I mean, I can relate to that. Just, outside influences, probably, nurture versus nature.
Well, I always thought it was kind of interesting that Emily and Richard never really went away from the we're going to use money to control seeing you thing. For Chilton and paid for Yale, it just kept coming back to we're not even going to modify our behavior to try and get you to like us more. We're just going to keep trapping you with cash.
But it was the girls, it was Lorelai and Rory who went to them asking for their financial help, and it was their, they were more than happy to loan them the money or gift them the money, but the girls offered up the terms of, okay, what do you want? And, Rory reinstated Friday night dinners when she went to Yale, but only for her. And, it wasn't, I don't think it was Emily and Richard doing that. I think it was the girls just finding a means to an end.
Well, they did it at first. That was the
very first,
Yeah, to get the money to go to the private school, because they hadn't spoken to each other up until she came to them for money for a long, long time. So,
well, since we're already kind of talking about it, why don't we kind of segue into favorite characters?
Favorite characters?
Favorite characters.
Oh boy!
I know there's like over 100 different possible characters you can choose from the Stars Hollow residents to the guest stars to the one-off person in the coffee shop. But who are your favorites?
Like main characters or secondary?
Anybody.
Narrow it down.
Well, I'll start with secondary characters, because that's easier to start with for me. Babette. I always loved Babette.
Played by Sally Struthers.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she was always a delight. And I always really liked Emily. My favorite episodes is that one where they're at a Friday night dinner and Rory's in college, and I can't remember what they're fighting about, but it's just snippets of the dinner, and they are up and they're down and they're eating all the time, and then by the end they're all exhausted, like eating ice cream.
I think that one's actually, I think it's called Friday Night's Okay for Fighting. Yeah. That's the whole episode, is them at a Friday night dinner just arguing and going between arguing yes and arguing no, and some people are arguing and
there's
some are
something
just
about
eating,
Emily and Richard.
Isn't it like right after she comes back after her break
from Yale? Yeah.
And they're all like tiptoeing around it, and then
and then she's like, I'm going back, and then it was the whole you didn't tell us probably.
Yeah, that was a good episode actually.
Yeah.
It was directed really well.
And Jess.
Oh, that's why she wanted to answer that question. Yeah, that's why.
No, but that's, I realize it's silly, but that is a major plot point of, you can easily track Rory's life in terms of Dean, Jess, Logan. Mm-hmm. And it's, for better or for worse, she was a different person with each of them, which speaks to Rory probably more than the guys, but... For
sure. I would agree Jess is definitely a favorite, and Luke. So, maybe I just like diner guys.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's easier to talk about who I don't like, actually.
Even though she's kind of ridiculously selfish, I do relate to Lorelai a lot. so I'd probably put her up there. I don't understand her track record with the men thing, but her addiction to coffee I certainly relate to, and her love of Pop-Tarts I certainly relate to, and I like how she and Rory have, the junk food nights with the videotapes and mother-daughter bonding kind of stuff. I always fancy that if I ever became a mom, I'd want to become like a Lorelai, be more of that free-spirited person. I also really like Luke. I was very invested in the Lorelai-Luke relationship. I also relate to Luke quite a bit, so with his somewhat antisocial behavior, and maybe by extension Jess, because he's in the gene pool, and also he's really yummy because he's Milo. But I also like Lane. I relate to Lane a lot, apart from the repressed Korean religious household thing.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, her sort of hipster music loving consummate best friend role, and just how she relates to everybody, Lorelai and Rory included. I appreciated her as the best friend character a lot. I can talk about who I don't like too. There was one that just came to mind. Shot, but I'll leave the.
We'll get to that second.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, Emily is always one of my favorites. Just the way she speaks all the time. You never know if she's going to say something super classy or cut somebody down really in a clever and, I don't know, very intelligent way. I appreciate that. But also Paris. I just love her.
I do love Paris.
Yeah. One of my all-time favorite moments of hers is when she's like, I think they were doing a fundraiser for like Burma or something, and they're running in from the rain, and a girl asks them, like, is it raining? She goes, no, it's National Baptism Day. It's so funny.
It was National Baptism Day tired too.
Yeah. Idiot, yeah. Yeah.
She did get some good lines.
She did.
Yeah. The all-time, Paris through and through. One of my favorites.
Segments where Lane was living with the guys and how Mrs. Kim was so not okay with it, and then she sort of came to terms with it. It's like, okay, you're not boys, you're girls.
And she decided that they were girls.
Yeah.
Just their relationship as a band and seeing them grow just as individuals, but still keeping together.
Which I think it's hilarious. It's Sebastian Bach is one of
I know.
Like, how did you get this Skid Row guy to be on this show?
And he was super funny.
He was super funny. He related really well, especially with, what's his name that played Zach?
Oh, I don't remember the actor's name, but the character Zach Van Gerbig, which I always thought was kind of a random last name to give the guy. But, yeah, which was interesting, because especially after Dave Rogowski, the wonderful Dave Rogowski, left the band.
Adam Brody.
Well, he had another TV show.
He did, too. Which they even said, Dave's in college in California. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I think for me, I don't know, Lorelai, hands down, is one of my favorite characters. Also Emily. I think it's just those two together. When they had their moments, like when they went to the spa together, when Emily and Richard were separated, and
the only hookers who have 2 glasses of wine at lunch part.
No, that's later. Okay. But I know when they're at the bar and she's talking about, like I think she said like only whores eat at the bar or something, and that's when the whole vicious trollop came into the vernacular. I don't know, just those two. I love those two hands down. But I also love Paris. I completely agree with Chelsea. Paris was smartly written. She was funny. I enjoyed her a lot more than I liked and enjoyed Rory.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm not that person.
Oh, no.
So who were your least favorite? You guys said you knew.
Taylor.
Really?
There are Taylors in the world, but Stars Hollow is so, idiosyncratically TV. So it's just
I don't know.
Taylor.
I really liked Taylor. I liked his freneminess with Luke, and how those two would go at each other, especially after Taylor wanted to open the soda shop. And
I know, but I always agreed with Luke.
I did too, but I still like the two butting heads. Maybe I'm the only one.
Down, Kirk and April.
I always thought Taylor was at his best when he was going back and forth with Kirk, and just oh my gosh, what stupid thing have you done now? But then he still keeps hiring him and or letting him do stuff around the town, even though he's always screwing it up. And so Taylor getting frustrated is probably the funniest thing ever.
Like when Kirk didn't label where he hid all the Easter eggs in the town square, and they had rotting Easter eggs for 2 weeks. And Krista, you said who was your least favorite?
Kirk. and April.
I think we can all agree on April,
Yeah,
can't we?
April is literally the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, the actress was great. She did well with what she was given, but why did they have to introduce April?
Because they had to break up Luke and Lorelai.
One last time.
Yeah, that was very forced. Are we at that point?
We can talk about that. Let's go for it.
That is probably the lowest point of the series for me, and of course I know why. I mean, I followed it even when it was on. I just wasn't watching it at the time, and I'm sure you'll talk about it, but the executive producers did not come to terms with the network, and they decided to proceed with a 7th season without them, which I think was just a horrible way to go, because the show, even when you watch it back to back, which I did, from season 1 to season 7 feels so much different than the first 6 seasons.
But April came in season 6.
She did, but it was kind of like in the back half, so you felt it coming. Like, oh, we're setting something up so that and it was just so contrived. And then, I have always liked Christopher.
Really?
I did always like
Christopher.
Christopher.
He was a good character. He was there for his daughter. They just weren't good together.
I just thought that if they were going to do what they did in season 7 between Lorelai and Christopher, they should have done it way earlier.
They should have. I feel like waiting to have them go off and get married or elope in their case and go to Paris was it was late in the game. It felt like it was one last card that they had up their sleeve to play, and they played it too late.
It's super contrived.
Super contrived.
And so then, because April is sort of attached to it, because she's the trigger that sends her over to Christopher, you end up not liking really anybody in the equation. And that's just, I don't think that was a very fair way to treat the characters.
The only realistic thing I saw about including April, and I should preface this with I still can't stand her, is that at least humanized Luke to sort of understand what Lorelai went through as a single parent. Because then he had to sort of go through it myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this kid. What do I do? How does my life change? Or involved now. So I think it sort of softened him up a bit. Well, I guess he was already engaged to Lorelai, but in terms of, okay, we're going to start this life together, and they were talking about kids, and he had wanted kids so badly. I think it was kind of a good reality check for him. So that would be the only redeeming factor of the April thing for me.
And there were some really nice moments that Luke and April had together, too. Like, that's kind of why I included the tenderness in the Luke description for your interest level. Is not only did he have great moments, with Rory and with Lorelai, but he also had some really sweet ones with April. And, the one that kind of comes to my mind is when he wanted to throw April that birthday party at the diner. And, he still needed Lorelai's help, but I felt just the way that he kind of went above and beyond to make sure that she had a great party, even though he had no clue what he was doing. I thought that was really
And that made me hate
sweet.
Anna even more.
Yeah, I didn't like Anna Nardini, April's mom.
I kind of understand that why they had to introduce April, but Kirk just drove me crazy for 7 seasons.
I love Kirk.
I
do. I feel like Kirk is just, I don't know, he's always consistent. And I loved him with Lulu. I loved those, once he and Lulu got together.
Okay, yeah.
I loved him so much, and I think my favorite, one of the reasons I love Kirk is because one of my favorite moments of the series is when they're doing the historical reenactment, and, the British generals supposedly come through Stars Hollow, and a woman of the evening distracts their general so they can go and alert who they needed to, and Lulu, who's supposed to play the whore, which Kirk comes into the diner yelling, "My girlfriend's the whore." He was so proud of her, and I just loved it. But then Lulu gets sick, and Kirk steps up to play the whore and has to seduce Taylor for a few minutes in public eye. I don't know. I just felt like Kirk was he was such a good center point for the town. Like, he's the reason everybody, I think, kind of wanted to move to Stars Hollow when the show was on. I would want to move to Stars Hollow, and I think part of it was Kirk. He was always, like Samantha said, he was always doing something crazy and always failing, and he had a million jobs, and I don't know. I loved Kirk. I loved Sean Gunn playing Kirk.
I felt like he was everybody's child. Everybody had to take care of him, have him when he left his mom's house. They'd have a whole meeting about taking care of him and just all that. That was interesting. The family town aspect.
He was a very consistent joke.
He was. We haven't even talked about Suki.
We haven't.
Melissa McCarthy. It wasn't quite her breakout role. I think that was when she did Bridesmaids, but this was her first big television role. And I don't know, what did you guys think of Suki? Because she's such a famous actress now. I feel like we gotta talk about her a little bit.
I like Suki a lot. I thought she was incredibly supportive toward Lorelai.
She was a very good friend.
Very good friend. Almost on balance, probably maybe a better friend than Lorelai was to her. It's interesting to see Melissa. I mean, it's totally different than the roles that she's been playing since that time, because she's much more in sort of the brashy and occasional gross-out comedy. Speaking of Bridesmaids. But I thought it was fun to watch her as Suki, and I like that she's a chef. It's interesting to hear all the things she made as the chef of the various inns.
Yeah, the Independence, and then Lorelai and Suki came together to buy the Dragonfly.
Which I would want to stay in the Dragonfly.
Oh, for sure.
It's very cute.
And they didn't seem like they would be annoying B&B people.
Well, maybe Michelle.
But you can't have a good B&B without somebody like Michelle.
I guess.
The kids love Michelle.
The kids
all
Michelle.
love
Michelle hates the kids.
And Michelle hates the kids.
So I liked Suki's only because I think her relationship with Jackson was something that Lorelai always kind of envied and used as a comfort, which I can relate to that, and I thought that was very. It was nice that the best friend wasn't the token best friend. You know, she got to have her own life, and it didn't always end poorly for her. And
yeah, she had a lot of dimension, and watching her and Jackson sort of come into their own and have their own little subplots was very interesting. And like you said, she wasn't just hanging out in the kitchen.
And the relationship between Suki and Michelle and Lorelai was a good dynamic.
That's true.
They made a good trio.
They had some interesting arguments or debates or...
Michelle yelling.
Yeah, mostly Michelle yelling and Suki saying, tell Michelle to be quiet, and then Lorelai trying to referee.
Well, I feel like we're kind of at that point now where we have to talk about Rory's boyfriends. Okay, so Rory's boyfriends, it's kind of hard for me. I mean, I loved Jess. I am so full on Team Jess, but I feel like it's such a disservice to a show that's about female relationships, mother-daughter relationships, that so much is talked about that it's just Rory's boyfriends. That's why I kept it later.
I get that.
It is still a topic of conversation to this day, to 2017, 10 years after the original series has ended. Who should Rory be with, or who was the best for Rory? Declare your team alliance. Who are you with, and why?
Do we have to say who it is today or who it was back then?
How about, let's do both. So who were you with when you were watching the original series, or when you first watched it? And now looking back, now that it's 10 years after this has ended, you know, a year in the life notwithstanding, who is your favorite now?
I'm Team Jess all the way now that I've had a chance to go back and rewatch it through several times. But my first time through, whoever she was with at the time, that's the team that I was on.
It's very honest of you. I like that.
Maybe I'm just fickle, but it was always like, yeah, I can see the value in each one of these people, and you can definitely connect each one of them with a certain time in her life, because it's like there's no way she would have been great with Logan when she was at Chilton. Like, Dean was the perfect first boyfriend, like very low-key and very safe and practical, and it just evolves as she evolved.
I think originally I was Logan, but I think it's because the order in which I watched them, and I still think that there is value in Logan, not like Dean where there's like some sort of universal hatred. Definitely Team Jess now. Because he really redeemed himself there at the end. Because if he just would have gotten on that bus and gone to California and we never saw him again, and he came back and he wore the shirt, and aww, so cute.
It should be noted that the reason Jess left for California is that they were considering doing a spin-off of Jess and his biological father and his
new family. That was a weird episode.
That was a very weird
backdoor
pilot. Yeah, I'm glad that it didn't happen. I would have loved to see more Jess, but now that Milo is on This Is Us on NBC, I get my Jess fix every week, so I'm good.
I think I've been Team Jess the whole time. I mean, I liked Logan when he came on later, and that was fine, but Jess, yeah, and then even now.
Still Jess.
Still Jess.
Okay,
yeah,
so we're a lot of Jesses.
And here I am.
Kylie.
I'm going to throw a wrench in it.
All right, do it.
So, of course, I had the perspective of having watched it within the last year. And I am nearing my 4th decade on this earth. So I was watching these 3 boyfriends with a different vantage point. And also I should preface this by saying that I'm a huge Supernatural fan, and I knew Dean as Sam.
Not Dean.
Because his brother is Dean.
Trust me, when I watched Supernatural, I kept saying Dean, and I was told no,
that's
Sam.
Sam.
I'm like, no, but it's also Dean.
I think the creators of Supernatural, which is also on the CW, should have realized if you're going to bring a character who played Dean into a show where he's not playing Dean, but his brother is playing Dean, you should probably change Dean's name.
Yeah, but their names are Sam and Dean, like actual Sam and Dean.
I know.
There's a whole thing there.
I know. I don't watch Supernatural, so I'll take your word for it.
Anyway, I was Team Dean for a long time because when Jess as an attractive factor, if you're just going to go based on looks, and when they were on the show, Milo was the cutest of the three.
Hands down.
Hands down. But Jess was a man-child in a lot of ways, and he was the sort of the archetypal bad boy who had to kind of grow up a little bit. So when he first came on the scene and she was all eyes sparkly for him and no longer for Dean, who was the reliable, slow, safe, sweet one, I was like, oh man, this is so like, people do this in TV all the time and in real life, and it's very frustrating. I never really liked Logan. I still don't really like Logan. I have a problem with Logan just because in many ways he's grown a lot as a character, and he grows even over the course of the original series, but he's still everything that Lorelai is railing against, and it's not what Rory knows, and they don't almost seem to fit at first for a very long time. So I was like, what? I don't like Logan, you know. But now that I've had the opportunity to think about it, and now that you see kind of the arc of where the boys end up, I would probably overall be a Team Jess, just because I think from an intellectual perspective, he's the most well-matched to Rory.
Well, I would agree, and that's why I ultimately ended up on Team Jess too, because even when he was like begging her to go away with him, and even though that seemed to be really about him, at the same time he didn't want her to have to pretend to be anyone that she wasn't. He wasn't concerned about the money or appearances. It's like, hey, go right, do your thing, and just be happy.
Because that was also Logan's lowest moment. That was the time at the bar where he got super drunk and yelled at everybody.
Yeah, where he was really making Jess feel very uncomfortable and arguing with Rory over it, and
yeah, I think Rory said it best when you're being a dick right now. Quote.
I agree with the fact that, you know, each of the guys, Dean, Jess, and Logan, they were who Rory needed to be with at that point in her life. They all served a purpose. You know, kind of happens in real life too. I kind of think that same way about the guys that I've dated. They all kind of served a purpose. I really liked Dean. I liked him in the beginning. He was the perfect first boyfriend you could ever hope to have, or have a friend or a daughter have. But he was also, I don't know, I kind of call him a Labrador. He was always just like that cute little puppy who just always wanted to do everything and make you happy, and that kind of gets annoying after a while if that's all there is. So overall, I think when I was watching it, I was still Team Jess. I like that he brought Rory out of her shell when he first came into the show, and then when he made repeat appearances in the later seasons where he was more put together, he was more sure of himself, he was more an adult and not a man-child. He really was, and still is, I think, the best intellectual match for Rory. I feel like they would be a really good, like, power couple. They would take on the writing, publishing, journalism world together and just kick ass. I hated Logan. I still hate Logan. I will never not hate Logan. I feel like he was an ass. He was so mean to her, and I don't know. I wouldn't want to date a Logan. I mean, I would jump off the thing, you know, the life and death brigade, you jump, I jump Jack. I would totally do that if a guy had me do that, but I don't know. I hate Logan.
Okay. So I didn't like Dean, actually, from the rewatch. It was from the adult perspective where I was just like, when he got in that fight with Kristen at the dance, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. If someone embarrassed me like that in public, like that would be it. I don't know. Oh. There was something about Logan that I could see how that would be attractive, and how he did seem to genuinely care for her. And it was different for Rory, and I suppose in college you're trying to try new things and people outside of your comfort zone, so what about exactly like your family, who you hate, or your mother hates at the time?
Because she was in that world, and he was part of that world, and
right.
So she kind of immersed herself in that world.
And, she got to, going on all these fancy trips and stuff.
Do you think Rory was just living that high life short term, and would it have worked long term for her and Logan to be together? It seemed like such a phony time for her, from my perspective, when she was living in the pool house and, oh, I got the Birkin bag and isn't this all amazing? That it seems like at some point that would break down for me. And I also wonder if instead of Lindsay and Dean getting married, if Rory and Dean had gotten married, would it have devolved the same way? Now we've hit the realities of life, of having to pay bills, and would those same challenges made their relationship not work like it did with him and Lindsay?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think either of those two could have made Rory happy in the end, and vice versa.
I find it interesting to think, because when Rory was first admitting that she liked Logan, Marty was also back in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Marty.
Yeah,
Marty, naked guy.
Yeah, naked guy.
Who ended up being a weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you didn't know what was coming with Marty, would it have made a difference? Should she have chosen Marty when she was going to choose Logan? I don't know if that would have been... I don't know. It's interesting to think about sometimes.
I liked Marty.
Yeah. I did too. They had a really good friendship.
Mm-hmm.
They liked a lot of the same things. They were both intelligent, and...
But he was totally friend-zoned.
He was totally friend-zoned. Hard. Mm-hmm. He went and dated Kristen Ritter. Character.
Very weird time for everyone.
Yeah.
Very different character from Jessica Jones.
Yes.
But also, I think this is the next point about season 7, but the reason they all stopped talking is because they never seemed like the dumb... if you're really friends, this wouldn't be a big deal, guys. The whole time, I was yelling at my television. If you're really friends, this wouldn't be a big deal. Why are you guys being jerks? But they shut her out hardcore.
Oh, you're talking about when
Kristen Ritter and the art girls.
When those two group of girls, when they found out that Rory had known Marty before, but then Marty wanted to say, no, don't tell her that we know each other because it'll just make it weird. And then finally, when they came clean, everybody was upset because they lied. They weren't upset at Marty, but they were upset at Rory.
Which didn't make any sense at all.
No.
And I'm like, but if it's your friend, you're going to talk about it and at least try and work through it, but maybe that's just me being grown up again.
I'm still kind of sad that Rory never got together with Tristan, to kind of go back to the Dean-Tristan fight. I don't know. I liked Tristan. I liked Chad Michael Murray, and it would have been really fun to see...
Oh, that was Tristan.
That was Tristan. Had he not been cast in... Yeah, but had he not been cast in One Tree Hill, and if he would have been on Gilmore Girls, at least throughout the high school graduation bit, would they have gotten together?
He could have been early Logan.
He could have been early Logan. I like Tristan. So, we talked about which team we're on, but were any of Rory's boyfriends actually Team Rory? Were they ever for her, or did they ever have her best interest or happiness at heart, or was it just a lot of one-sided?
Just did at the end. When he came back.
I think the problem with the 3 boys is that, they did, but only to the capacity that they were capable of at that time in their lives. Like Dean, you already made the Labrador comparison. That's probably how he thought he had to be with a girl that he loved.
He was only 14 or 15.
Exactly.
Because you're saying just as a man-child, I'm like, he was 16.
Right.
You've seen how 16 boys act? They're idiots.
They are idiots. But he was he was just incredibly petulant because he had a lot of horrible things, and he took it all out on Rory, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. I guess I would have been totally into that when I was 16, so I guess that's how my brain works.
I see. I guess I didn't have the same experience.
Fair.
But with Jess, it was the same thing. I think he really was Team Rory, but he was so wrapped up in his own stuff that there was no way for him to be fully supportive of her. And then Logan was so kind of influenced by his influence, or affluence, if you will, and his father, and all the expectations placed on somebody born to the silver spoon. He was the one who seemed to me to be the most self-centered of the 3, but I still think that he ultimately cared about Rory in the end. It didn't come off like it did.
Well, I think he did care about her, but I don't know from a Team Rory perspective if he would have taken that step of, okay, my family doesn't approve of you, I'm just going to write all that off and let's start from nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not.
He wouldn't have done it.
No.
And we know that for a fact.
We do. I don't think any of the guys were really Team Rory. I think Dean really tried to be, and I think he did it too much. I think he took it way too far, like, getting in the fights with Jess and Tristan and then quickly going off and marrying Lindsay, but still having feelings for Rory because then they slept together at one point, and I don't know.
He was her first.
He was her first.
If you don't sleep with a married person,
it's generally frowned upon.
It is. Yeah, but it's Rory, and Rory makes bad decisions. But I agree with you guys. I think out of all three, later Jess, like season 6 Jess, would have been the most Team Rory for sure. Yeah, Logan is only Team Logan. And it's whatever pretty girl is on his arm that week.
Kristen doesn't like
I don't like Logan!
And
the only person I don't like more than Logan is April.
Wow!
Okay.
Wow.
I don't like April. But
I just like a lot more people. That's again. I also don't like Dean very much, so I'm different perspective.
And I just watched it and I said, look, there's baby Sam. Only he's not Sam.
He's Dean.
He's Dean. It was very confusing in my life.
Again,
Okay, so we've kind of talked around it a little bit. But one of the things that I kind of want to get to now is about season 7. As we all start giggling uncomfortably. As Kylie had kind of alluded to, but I'll just repeat for the listener. Season 7, right when they were going in between season 6 and season 7, that's when the WB got rebranded and reconfigured into the CW. The creator, Amy Sherman Palladino, and her husband, Dan Palladino, their contracts were up. The actors' contracts weren't. And so the network and the Palladinos, they could not come to terms. I don't know if it was over creatively or money or what. That really hasn't been expressively been said, but whatever happened, they could not come to an agreement, and the Palladinos said, sorry, we're out, good luck, we're done. So at that point, series writer and executive producer from day one, David S. Rosenthal, was tasked to take over. I know some of you had mentioned, did it have a different feel to you? Did it feel like a different show? Did it feel the same? How do you think the show was affected by losing that original voice?
It was way more drama heavy in the 7th season. Everything was much more soap opera like. The whole Christopher marriage thing, and then Lorelai gazing longingly at Luke from afar. That whole business, basically to throw, like we said, a contrived wrench into their relationship.
It's the Ross and Rachel will they won't they.
Pretty much.
And then she goes with Christopher.
Yeah.
And then she divorces Christopher.
I noticed there was also, in all of one of the things that I think draws people into Gilmore Girls as a whole is the atmosphere that's created, not only in terms of Stars Hollow and sort of the very quirky small town you find yourself in, but there's atmospheric details like the music, for example, like the la la la, stuff that underscores. You don't hear as much of that in the 7th season. A lot of that is lessened. You don't even see the Stars Hollow texture people, the supporting characters, quite as often as you see Lorelai, Luke, Rory.
Yeah,
Logan.
we missed. There was a lack of town meetings in the 7th season. I kind of noticed, and that was always one of my favorite parts that they do every couple of weeks was have a town meeting.
Yeah, so there were a lot of things that I don't know if they skimped on because maybe their budget took a tumble, or maybe those were things that were insisted upon by Amy Sherman and Dan and not David, but it did have a very different feel. And it was very noticeable for me because I watched 6 straight into 7, no stopping, and for the very first time, and just felt like it was flat. The 7th season was very flat because of the strong encouragement to watch Gilmore Girls, to kind of put it into perspective. It took me a while to get going with season 1. Once I finally felt it click, it was somewhere around the Rory Dean, we're together now and it's super cute. And then I probably binged it, like legitimately binged it for the next, up until about season 5, maybe season 6. April entered the picture. I was like, this can't be good. New child character, you know what that means in TV, folks. And then the 7th season, and I slowed way to a halt. Like, I had to force myself to get through that, and just on the premise of, we're going to be podcasting about it, and the revival series, so gotta finish it.
One slight highlight for season 7 was Lane, for me. Lane being pregnant.
With twins.
One of my favorite moments for Lane that it sticks out is when she's talking about her honeymoon and how they had sex on the beach and some guy was watching and how it was sandy and it wasn't good. And she was and Laura was trying to convince her that the first time is weird. And then there was some crack about Dean and then the babies came and Rory didn't know what role she was going to play and it just felt very real.
I kind of take the exact opposite view of Lane. I felt it was such a disservice to her character that she got it's funny that she the good Christian girl, she waited until after marriage to have sex. She had sex once and boom, twins. That was kind of funny. But the fact that she was left with, I'm going to stay home with the babies while my husband goes out on tour, that didn't feel it felt weird to me. I don't think I feel like it was such a disservice for Lane.
There was something about it did seem like she genuinely wanted to. She genuinely wanted to be there and support her family, and Brian was going to be with her and help with the babies, and this is what the band has to do to get through kind of a thing. No, I didn't love it, but I felt like if they were going to have to go down that road, they did it okay.
I don't know, most of season 7 is a blur to me because when I had watched it on television originally, I was totally unaware that there was even a season 7 because they weren't showing it at the time, so I thought it had ended on her waking up with Christopher. And that's where it cut off. And I was like, that's a terrible way to end a series. Giant cliffhangers. Absolutely hate it. So whenever there was a season 7, I was like, oh, this is great. That's not how it ended. And then you sort of have to trudge your way through most of season 7. And then I felt like it really ended on a nice note. You could just sort of leave it like everyone's okay. With them back in the diner and with Rory graduating. But yeah, it took a lot of work to get to that as a viewer.
I don't know if this is a question later on, but that's a very sweet ending moment. Mm-hmm. The fact that it comes back to Lorelai and Rory at a table by themselves in Luke's, and it pans out just like it does in the opening credits.
Yeah,
I thought that was very nice.
Right, well, we can jump ahead to that because that was actually kind of where I was going to head next, is talking about the series finale in and of itself. So just a little sidebar here. The show was canceled. It wasn't that they left. The CW decided not to renew it. I don't know if it was due to falling ratings because the Palladinos had left or they couldn't come to terms with the cast. I don't know. But it was canceled.
All of it.
It could be all of it.
Yeah.
Even though it was canceled, they still had time to pull together a very good wrap-up for the series. You guys had said, Rory graduated from Yale, and after not knowing what she was going to do, she was offered to go on the road following then Senator Barack Obama's, campaign for the presidency. That's where that was her assignment, was to go and follow, because he had just put his name in. It was very relevant at the time. The Democratic bids were coming out for the 2008 election. So ironically, she went off to go follow our future 44th president on the campaign trail. And, history. Lorelai and Luke got back together in the last few moments. Suki and Jackson had 2 kids, and I think, was there a third one? Third on the way. They were happy.
Because Jackson didn't really get a vasectomy.
He did not get a vasectomy, which was a big laugh moment. The dragonfly was doing well. Everybody was great. Michelle was still going to hang around. Her parents were doing well. They were back together and happier than before. Excited for Rory to go off.
That graduation party was, and we're...
The graduation bon voyage party.
Yeah, and when Richard and Emily's told Lori that they were proud of her, and that all of this is for you too.
It's a testament to you and the life that you've built here. I think is what Richard had said.
The feelings,
Yeah. So do you feel that the series finale? Oh, also, Logan proposed to Rory, and Rory said no. That was probably my favorite part.
I thought
saying no.
I thought that whole part was unnecessary and forced, and it didn't seem to be in character at all.
For Logan? Yeah.
Because...
Oh, see, I sort of saw it as right in his wheelhouse.
Oh.
I mean, the timing was cute because Richard and Emily had just sang to her, which was adorable, singing You're at the Top.
But I also think that, Rory had made it clear that she wasn't that kind of public display of affection kind of girl. Mm-hmm. And
Chelsea is agreeing very hard right now.
Knew that and even argued that with Emily, I'm pretty sure, and he said, no, you do it anyway.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. And I feel like Logan flaws and all, would have still been a strong enough person to be like, no, this isn't what she wants. And I felt like they were just forcing the ending all of a sudden, which maybe they were because it got canceled, but...
I think they had enough time to prepare for it. I think that's how they just chose...
Well, that was a poor choice.
To wrap up that storyline. I don't think it was a poor choice. I think it was, Logan, I think he knew that she was going to go off to things, and it was, I need to put a ring on it if I'm going to keep her, because she's not going to stick around for me. Because, she wants to go off and have this great journalism life.
Hadn't they, broken up, a half a season before?
They were always on and off.
She wasn't going anywhere before when they were on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of the take that I have on it. I mean, you're absolutely right. Logan forced Rory's hand in many ways and didn't read her correctly. Mm-hmm. But what do we know about Logan? He wants everything the way he wants it right now because that's learned behavior from his father.
It's true.
He's very much a product of his upbringing, and that's something that the show very much establishes he can't escape from. So I didn't think that moment was forced on the finale. I thought it was expected for it to be the series finale that moment came.
Right.
I did like that after the graduation when Logan said, you have to make a decision. I'm not just going to sit here and wait. There was something nice about them not dragging it out and making it more complicated than it needed to be. Mm-hmm. So I'll give them that.
Yeah, because Rory essentially said something along the lines of, I'm sorry, or I can't, and he just closed the ring box and said, goodbye, Rory, and walked away.
Right, which
was great. I think that was done with class and tact, which, again, part of Logan's upbringing.
I think the dialogue was organic and true to what each of them were typical to say or respond to each other with.
But all in all, do you guys like where the characters ended up? Was there anything you would have changed? Did they do justice to the previous 6-7 seasons?
Kind of, sort of. But from where they were at, yes.
Yeah, I liked the finale so much so that I sort of, gave them a break on the rest of season 7. When that episode ended, I was like, okay, I'm ready for more. Which makes no sense, given what we had gone through to get there. I guess it's sort of a testament to what Amy and Dan had put into the characters in the preceding 6 years, that I was that invested to say, yeah, let's just keep going.
Maybe I'm an outlier here. I really didn't like the finale at all. It just felt like the characters didn't have anywhere to grow from there. It wrapped everything up so nicely that it was they were done. So I couldn't imagine anything for them, which made me kind of mad. Because I just like to, the whole season's going through, I like to think about where could they go with that decision. What are they going to, what effect is that going to have on them? And I'm just going, well, Rory's going to go off and work. Good for her. They're going to get married. Good for them. That's kind of just it. So I was left wanting something else from that.
Is there anything that you would have liked to see instead?
I have no idea.
You just didn't like what you saw, but you don't know what you would have wanted.
No, I'm not creative enough to. Yeah.
I agree with Samantha in the sense that it was much better than the season that preceded it. Mm-hmm. I think by the end, and since I ended up being Kirk on your character spectrum, I think by the end of the series finale, I was, okay, so that happened. Mm-hmm. We saw a glimpse of this life and these lives and how they related to each other, and I wasn't feeling elated by it, but I didn't hate it. Said it to you this way. I thought it was very pleasant. Mm-hmm. It had a pleasant finale on a pleasant series, and that's kind of where I landed. It started off pleasant, it ended pleasant. It wasn't earth-shattering. Yeah. It was enjoyable, but, okay, so that happened. That's basically how I felt.
I'm happy with it. I really, I agree with Samantha where I didn't really like season 7. I felt like I kind of had to trudge through it, but the series finale made it worth it to me. I remember watching it, after I had watched everything in order, getting to that point. I think I actually shed a couple of tears at the going away party because everybody was there. All the the Stars Hollow residents were there. Emily and Richard were there. Everybody. And I thought part of it too, it's how crazy must it be for those actors who have been there for 7 years to be here filming this, and they're not only saying goodbye to Rory, but they're also saying goodbye to each other too at this point. So I think that's probably why I got a little more emotional, is thinking about it from their perspective. But I think the only character I wasn't happy with, which is what I said, was Lane. I felt like Lane deserved a little bit more. But I loved that Luke and Lorelai were back together, that Rory was going off to do this awesome journalism job, and she was going to take over the world, and Richard and Emily were there, and their whole family was on great terms with each other, and everything was just, it was going to be okay. They were all in a good place. They were going to go forward to a good place. No, Lane's the only thing I would change.
Okay. Well, what would you change Lane to? She goes off with the band and they all go on tour?
I don't know if I would have gotten her pregnant. I think that would be the main thing I would have changed, is her getting pregnant. I don't know. I like the fact that her first time was very awkward and clumsy. Mm-hmm. I think that's very appropriate for Lane. But I don't think I would have had her get pregnant. I would have wanted to see Hep Alien go out on tour together, and not just Zach being a replacement guitarist for a different non-Hep Alien band. I would have liked to see them go together. So one thing that was kind of talked about was that before things fell apart and the Palladinos had left, apparently Amy Sherman Palladino already knew how the series would end when she started writing it, and what the final 4 words would be. Because she had left at the end of season 6, we never got to know what those final 4 words were, and fans were really concerned. Are we ever going to find out what these words are? What were these words? Do you guys feel like that was a big issue for you, that like you didn't know what the words were, that you didn't get the ending that the original creator had in mind, or was this the ending she had in mind? Was there any concern on you guys as fans that...
I didn't really care.
You didn't care?
I didn't know about this controversy.
Okay.
So I have no thought.
To some extent, though, it was like, well, but they left. So they left. So
yeah, it was kind of out of their hands at that point.
It was moot, and who knows if it would have been a similar direction or not.
Because when the show was airing, we, the audience, did not know how the series was going to end. That the Palladinos had kept it under wraps. Even like a lot of the actors didn't know. They knew that there was an ending in mind, but they didn't know what was going to happen. And the whole world didn't know, and the actors didn't know until they watched the final A Year in the Life moment.
Well, I guess if I could pivot back to the actual series finale,
mm-hmm.
kind of liked that Luke and Lorelai didn't just end up getting married right at the end of it. It's like they're sort of together, they're sort of back to a good place. For me, it was wrapped up, but not wrapped up like a TV show would classically sort of pair people off.
Yeah, I liked that too. It was a very, for sure, yep, they're together. They're going to go have a good future together, but you don't need to see the wedding to validate it. So the show kind of found a new audience once it moved to Netflix, and there was a lot of first-time viewers that are just now finding the series. Do you guys think that Gilmore Girls still holds up 17 years after it premiered?
Yes, I do. And this is coming from somebody who watched it 17 years after it premiered. I think it holds up very well. I mean, there are obviously a lot of the pop culture is from the early 2000s, and that's obvious. But it is smartly written. If anything else can be said, that mainly is it. It's smartly written, and the characters have, even though they're well developed and they have definitely progression over the 7 seasons, they're a very relatable set of characters. Even when they're not relatable, they're relatable. I mean, Chelsea really liked Emily Gilmore. I didn't relate to Emily Gilmore at all, but she was hysterical and funny, and her zingers are just as funny now as I imagine they were funny when they first aired, Lorelai being kind of who she is, and her back and forth with Luke, I think, is timeless. That's kind of your standard will they or won't they, but with the Gilmore Girls twist. And I think because they thought to make it something a little bit unique and a little bit more special, it does hold up. And because there's so much rapid dialogue and you don't catch it right away, mm-hmm. you have to rewatch it. So I think it holds up because it's replayable or rewatchable.
Yeah, the only thing that felt dated to me, and I could sort of look past the flip phones and some of the 2000s, is just the fact that Rory goes to work on Obama's campaign. That's very, you can set that in stone of when that was happening, and it feels old to watch it today. But beyond that, I'd say you could definitely pick it up at any time.
I think even now when I'm watching it, because when I was watching it the first time, I would, kind of look up to Rory, because she was slightly older than I was, so the trajectory was different there. But now, looking back on it, I think I like reflect on my own life too, which I hope that doesn't say too much bad about me and but
there's
like,
no bad, no judgment.
Okay, good. But like I can find some parallels as she's growing up in my own life, like even relationships too, just finding parallels there, and so that's a whole different layer rewatching it. And with Lorelai and all the characters too, just different things that you can relate to at different times in your life.
Yeah, because it kind of goes back to what you were saying about how Rory is just the worst. But but people are kind of the worst. Like like real people are flawed, and on TV we don't see that very often. Sometimes the characters that are they're just the worst character ever. It's like, yeah, but that's also how people are. So there's something to be said for that, and so you'll always find something to invest in, even if the flip phones and everything, and the Lindsay Lohan references,
Well, she's still around.
Right, but you're still going to be able to connect with them on like a emotional level.
Mm-hmm. Last question before we wrap this up. Would you recommend this show to others?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I would recommend it. As maybe the most reticent of the five of you, I would recommend it. I think it's smart, and I think that I'll use myself as an example. Even if you think you're not into this genre or into this type of TV, you will still like it. I still think it's worth watching. And it's funny and tender and sweet at times. And pleasant. That's my word for it. Pleasant. Okay, I'm done.
Yes, I would recommend it. I think in the age of Netflix and streaming, it's accessible on any episode. Like, you can jump in. I certainly didn't jump in from episode 1 when I first watched it, and I still got a lot out of it. It certainly made more sense when I went back and watched it all in order without commercials and had the benefit of seeing a lot of content in a very short time. But it's you can just pick it up. There's so many different characters, and it's so light that it's just very easily accessible.
Yeah, I would say yes, I recommend it. It's not so dramatic that you're going to get emotionally charged about it, but it's just really a nice thing to have that you can watch.
It's good escapism television, which I'm a big proponent of. I try not to watch things that are going to frighten me or make me feel sad, as an example. So this is good for me.
So it will not make you feel sad or scare you.
That's good. Yeah, I agree with you guys too. I definitely would recommend this show to somebody who's never seen it. I feel like each time you watch it, you can get something different out of it. Because when I first found it, I was much closer in age to Rory, and so I was really connecting with her. But now, since I've rewatched it, I am closer in age to Lorelai. When Lorelai was, because she was 32 and 16 were the two ages when they first started the series. So I'm much closer to Lorelai's age now, and so I can really relate more with her. Not on the mother front, but on her life front. And like Samantha said, it's very easily accessible to everybody because most of the population has Netflix, so it's pretty easy to pick up. And the nice thing is, once you watch it all the way through once, you can go back and cherry pick and just watch your favorite episodes and still enjoy it on a standalone basis.
That's what I do all the time. I've watched I Jump Jack about 700 times.
Which one's that?
The one where she jumped off the building.
Oh, got it.
With the umbrella.
I don't know
episode
titles.
It's just a very comfortable show. It's like perfect to just sit back and you could just easily go through 5 or 6 episodes without even thinking about it.
And then suddenly it's nighttime.
Suddenly it's 2 a.m. and you have to get up for work.
Boy, with the poodles already. I had to fit that in. So with that, I would like to thank Samantha, Chelsea, Krista, and Kylie for joining me on this look back at Gilmore Girls seasons 1 through 7. And thanks again for Kylie for letting me take over moderating duties once again. So next up, this panel will reconvene and take a look at the revival or the continuation series called Gilmore Girls: A Year in the Life. So stay tuned.
And now I'll read the little tag that I've been reading because I learned things from other podcasters. They should really stop influencing me. CPU is produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, and hails from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, which means give us some stars. I won't tell you how many to give us, but just please do. Or comment on YouTube so that we can spread the word more effectively. If you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, via email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via Facebook and Twitter, though we're adding new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time, as you heard, I'm sure, from our lengthy introduction. As always, we do have several more new episodes coming down the pike and are available and searchable via the web. We are everywhere. Make sure you subscribe to any one of our channels, our blog, or social media accounts and stay up on new events and episodes. You can catch up on past seasons of Gilmore Girls, as Kristen noted, as well as the miniseries we'll be talking about. It's all on Netflix, and really Netflix should owe us money for as many times as we've mentioned their name today. While no official announcement about future seasons of Gilmore Girls has been made, CPU will certainly stay abreast of any Gilmore coverage that we learn, so should Netflix decide to keep going, we'll let you know. Until next time, keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned. Bye-bye.